Welcome back to my Artios CAD tutorial series. Today I'll continue working on the rebuildable partition set from the last video. What I want to do is make it a little more appropriate for use across my organization, and that includes things like making the panels come out to even 16ths, creating a preview of the design for the users of the parametric to understand what they will get, and then actually adding the part as an option in the standards library for the rest of my organization. So I've saved the work from the previous video and I need to clean this design up. I want to start with the dimensions that aren't even 16ths. These panels down here, once this got to production, that would cause some issues. We can do this pretty easily. There are a few ways to do it. You could use the stretch tool and you could put a rounding factor in this dimension. You could offset this line by a distance and a rounding factor. But what I really want to do is I want to go back in time and change this so that it does the rounding when I actually drew this panel. As long as you have StyleMaker enabled on the design from the creation of the design, everything you've done has been recorded in Rebuild Playback. It's an extremely powerful tool and even allows you to make some designs rebuildable, even if you used a number instead of a variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Rebuild Playback, and you see it has a timeline here, and you can go all the way back to the beginning of the design. But I want to rewind to when I made this panel. There we go. Right there. Whoops. And so this fast forwards to the end. So you want to go right here and then one step at a time, and then hit the edit button. And if you look at the other video, this is the exact same formula that was in the expression builder when I designed this panel. But the length of this line is almost never going to end up being an even 16th. So you take a decimal and then you subtract cal and everything. It never ends up a 16th. So what I want to do is I want to round down, and I'm going to show you here in just a second where I'm getting these values. But basically, I'm telling Artios CAD that I want to take this formula and round it down by this much. And this is a variable that's in Artios CAD by default. And it's basically just rounds it to the 16th. So you can either go round up or round down depending on what you're doing. If you're needing to round the inside dimension of something, you would round up. If you want something to fit inside something else, you want to round down. So let's see. Let's do that. Let's fast forward. And there we go. Now it's an even 16th. My sheet is an even 16th. And that was super easy for future reference. If you have an Artios CAD design that you use a lot and that you're typically stretching or whatever to get it to fit, you could potentially make that into a parametric design and use it in your standards catalog. And I want to go into StyleMaker. And this is where I get to set up those windows. I have Advanced StyleMaker, so I could add multiple panels to the process there. Standard StyleMaker doesn't allow you to do multiple menus, but that's fine. Most of these you're going to have all this stuff in here anyway. So to show you what CRRV is, so that's a standard variable that's in all StyleMaker capable Artios CAD designs. It's just there. It's a value that you can use, just like round up and round down are typical values that Artios CAD understands. It's in there with inside loss and outside gain. And you could probably change these into the defaults if you have, say, you're in folding carton and you want to round to the 32nd or whatever. So these are the variables that I've put in here, and you can see all the information. If I wanted to say length is always greater than width, length is greater than width, it will give me an error message if I ever swap the two. And I can do length is greater than width. And I put the check condition on both values so that if I put in the length and then I put in the width and then I go back and I change the length, it'll give me the error either direction. Okay, so now I want to do the preview for other designers so that they know what they're getting. So I'm going to do diagram, and you can see that there are no diagrams to edit here. So I'm going to go create new diagram, and then I'm going to draw a box around the area that I want to show in the diagram. And it's created a new layer called DocPlot1. And that's always going to be diagram layers. So I hit OK on that. And you can see in my dialog box here, I have a new layer. And the DocPlot layer is deleted if you put this in your standards library and you run the standard. It will not carry over the DocPlot layer into your CAD design. So what I want to do is I want to dimension a few things. These, I want to show the user what the variables are that they're going to enter into the dialog. So I just double click these dimensions and I go, this is the length, or L. This is width. This is depth. And this is blend radius. All right, there we go. Now, when we go back to the main design, it's going to turn off the DocPlot layer. And I actually like having these annotation layers so that I can double check things. So as a designer, and if this is sort of thing is allowed in your organization, I like to create an annotation layer and name it whatever I'm referencing. So if I have product, if I have a planogram, or whatever for this part, I like to put it on an annotation layer and set it as the top view. Of course, I have all my outputs that go to other departments set to ignore annotation layers. So dimensions and art notes and things like that, they go on not annotation layers. That way they can show up in the reports that I run. So if I do this and I hit F5, now I see my preview. I've got my length, width, depth, and blend radius. So let's see. Let's go back. Yeah, I've already done it. Let's take. There we go. Now we can rebuild, and the annotation layer is hidden. The dimensions still come over, and anything we do after this point, say I wanted to make it 2 out. And dimension it. Of course, it's a huge sheet. You wouldn't actually do this. But if I hit F5 and rebuild and I change any of these, it's going to rebuild the whole thing. It's going to remember that I duplicated it and mirrored it. It's going to remember all that stuff. All right. The next step would be to save this. I want to save this to my desktop. Now, under its options, defaults, before I add these to the organization's standards, I add them to mine and I test them. I have a few people in my organization that help me test things, and I would add it to their defaults and we would do some testing before we make it available to the organization. This is a very simple design, so I'm confident it's going to work. But I'm still going to test it, make sure I get all my menus set up right. And I have folders in here just to help in the dialog. So I'm going to go new data, and I'm going to call it XX partitions port. I want to double click that to open it. It is an RDOS CAD standard. I'm going to do desktop. This is the file. It remembers the username. I'm going to hit apply and OK, and then file save. And now that design is going to be in my style catalog. So if I go file, run a standard, and I open up my JCG, it is right here. Gives me the preview and everything. I can select, let's do C. And let's do 16 by 8 by 6, do 1.5. Boom, there we go. Of course, it's going to be up to the designer to make sure that their radius isn't inappropriate for the depth. I could put a check condition in there. Let's see if I can do a check condition. Blend radius. Let's see. We got to do more than half. It has to be less than half the depth. Let's see. B needs to be less than D times 0.5. Wonder if that'll work. Hit save on that. Run a new design. Pick this one. Let's see, 16, 8, 6. If I hit OK. There we go. Now it gives you an error when you try to run it. So go to, and I need to make sure that it is 0.5. If I hit OK, it runs it. So there we go. We even added a check condition. So I'll make sure to save that again so that it appears every time I run that standard. So if I run it, do another test. There we go. I got two issues here. So my length and width are the same, so it doesn't like that. I can go to, and I need to make, let's try this. Let's make it more. Still error. So I'll go to, and I will make my length 11, my width 10, my blend radius 2. There we go. Everything works. And look at this. In the process, I can see that it's not rebuilding the dimensions properly. So I go back to the original design here and select all my dimensions. Go to the properties. And sometimes you got to click this to make it take effect and then update property defaults. That's changing the defaults so that all the dimensions added on this design will use these same settings. So do that, hit save, run it again. There we go. And you see, this is why we do testing, because some of these dimensions are on the wrong layer. We'll move them to the dimension layer. Turn the dimension layer back on. Save that. Run another test. There we go. That's the ticket. That's what we wanted. Now that one is ready to actually move over to my design organization. Now that I've got all the little kinks worked out of it. And I want to do that by going here. So I'll take this and just drag it, drop it over there, and then save my shared standards, and I'm done. Thanks for watching.